Hello, Michael here, looking today at Proverbs 3, specifically verse 16 to 20 for the exposition. Well, let's go ahead and read the first 20 verses of this chapter. Verse 1. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the firstfruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. Verse 16. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Verse 17. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Verse 18. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. Verse 19. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by understanding hath he established the heavens. And verse 20. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. And now to the exposition. Verse 16. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. A happy life extended to old age is given to the lovers of wisdom, or if cut off in the midst of their days, they are no losers. They cannot even in this case complain that God is unfaithful to his promise, for in another world they enter on a state of life which excels the present as much in value as in duration. If a man promised to give us 70 acres of ground in a barren country, and instead of them gives us 10,000 in fruitful soil, watered by the river of God, and blessed by the smiles of heaven, he's not worse, but a great deal better than his word. Riches and honor are given in the same sense as length of days. When Solomon testified his high regard for wisdom, God bestowed upon him the riches and glory of this world. But experience taught Solomon that these things did not make him wiser or better or happier. Let us from the history of the wise man learn to implore the accomplishments of this promise in a spiritual sense. There are eternal treasures and unfading diadems reserved for the wise in another world. There they will be so rich that the streets of their city of habitation are paved with pure gold, so honorable that they sit with Christ himself on his throne. But great as are the advantages, splendid as are the honors which wisdom confers, the world is generally prejudiced against it, and its being burdensome and unpleasant. Worldly pleasures appear so desirable, so essential indeed to human happiness, that for this sole reason multitudes abhor the thoughts of becoming religious. In order to remove this mischievous prejudice, Solomon assures us that religion is not less conducive to pleasure than it is to honor and wealth. Verse 17. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Call not religion Mara, but call her Naomi, for she is in every respect desirable. True indeed, it is no rare occurrence to find a religious man leading an unpleasant life, but this is to be ascribed to his own mistakes and dispositions, and not to religion, than which nothing tends so much to render the present life a scene of happiness. It is pleasant to enter into wisdom's way by believing on Christ. It is pleasant to go on in these paths by walking in Him who is the new and living way. In God's presence is that fullness of joy unto which those travelers shall enter at the termination of their journey. Even now some drops of those rivers of pleasure that are with Him enter into their souls, and give them more delight than the highest earthly enjoyments can impart to those whose portion is in this life. It will readily be admitted that some of wisdom's ways are pleasant, but are they also? Yes, all her paths are peace itself, for the work of righteousness as well as the erect of it is peace. There is peace and pleasure in repentance, which is sweetened by the apprehension of God's mercy in Christ, so that the true penitent enjoys more satisfaction in 1 hour's mourning than the votary of worldly pleasures in 20 years' carnal gratification. There is pleasure in self-denial, for he that practices it knows that he is the true self-seeker, and of this he is assured by the word of Christ. There is pleasure and peace in bearing the cross of Christ, for it is made light by the Spirit of Christ, and the prospect of sharing with Him in His glory. There is pleasure and peace in tribulations, because when they abound, consolations abound much more by Christ. There is peace in the fighting the Lord's battles against the mightiest enemies, for the Christian soldier fights under the banner of the Prince of Peace. His feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. The God of peace will bruise every enemy under his feet. More exquisite is that pleasure which the subjugation of one's sinful affection produces, than that which results from the gratification of 1,000. Should the Christian be called to die a violent death, there is peace in his latter end, as we find there was in the death of the good Josiah when he fell in battle. The pleasures of the world are like the gleams of a wintry sun, faint and feeble and transient. The pleasures of religion are satisfying and eternal. The calamities of this life are not able to interrupt, far less to destroy them. This is verified in the experience of every one whose soul is under the lively influence of that faith which constitutes an essential part of religion. David, though in deep waters, yielded not to desponding thoughts, believing that the Lord would yet command his loving kindness. Though about to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he saw no ground for the fear of evil. All the exercises, all the privileges, all the hopes of religion are full of pleasure. Even the trials to which religious men are exposed afford pleasure, if not whilst they are felt, at the farthest when they come to a period. Such is the pleasure and peace with which wisdom is attended that, verse 18, she is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. Nothing in the present state of the creation is sufficient to furnish out a proper emblem of the happiness that wisdom affords. And therefore the wise man goes back to the state of the world on the innocent Adam, comparing the delights of religion to the fruits of the tree of life. For the sin of Adam, we were driven from paradise, and our approach to the tree of life in the midst of the garden forever prevented. But a second Adam was opened our way to a better paradise, in which is the tree of life that bears every month 12 manners of fruit. The branches of this wide-spreading tree bend over to this lower world, and those that are wise unto salvation sit under its shadow with great delight, while its fruit is sweet to their taste. If we wish to eat of these delicious and soul-reviving fruits, we must take fast hold of wisdom, and keep that hold against all the enemies that would tear it from us. To wisdom we must cleave with purpose of heart, when the devil and the world would persuade us to forego some part of truth or duty, or to make some small compliance with sin, in order to serve some worldly end. To him that overcometh, that is to him that keepeth Christ's works unto the end, will he give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. To all the great things that have been said of wisdom, let us add the glory which belongs to wisdom, as it appears in creation and providence. Verse 19 and 20. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by his understanding hath he established the heavens. By this knowledge of the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. Knowledge and wisdom belong to God in their highest perfection, and shine forth in all his works. By his wisdom he established the world, and formed every creature beautiful in its kind. By his knowledge the heavens and the earth and all their inhabitants were formed into one universe, which incessantly proclaims the greatness of its Creator's wisdom. The language of every creature, when considered by itself, and especially when viewed as part of the grand system, is, "We come forth from the Lord of hosts, who is wonderful in counsel and excellent in wisdom." The world could never have afforded us a convenient dwelling place, had not the depths, by the knowledge of God, been broken up, and the waters separated from the dry land, to be laid up in the vast repository of the sea, or to flow along in rivers for our benefit. It is wisdom that draws up the moisture from the earth in waters, and exhales it in vapors, forming them into clouds, and again distilling them in dew, or pouring them down in rain, that food may spring out of the earth for man and beast. This wisdom calls for our gratitude and praise and imitation. We cannot pretend to make or govern a world, but we are enjoyed to manage our own concerns with wisdom. The God whose understanding is infinite hath dignified us with rational powers, and directed us to that wisdom which is proper for us. When he displayed the wonders of his infinite understanding at the creation of all things, he said to man, "The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding." He is the giver of wisdom, and he gives it from his own exhaustless stores. Every beam of wisdom in man is a ray from the eternal sun, and the divine image which we lost by our folly in departing from God begins to be renewed in us when we attain that knowledge and wisdom so earnestly recommended by the royal teacher. Is wisdom so incomparably useful and excellent? Let us then listen with reverence to the instruction that again speaks to us as unto children. Trust you enjoyed the exposition on Proverbs 16 to 20, even as we looked at the first 20 verses. Michael here declaring yet again, Jesus is Lord. Until next time, be blessed.